Hello and welcome. I'm really glad you're here. In today's episode, you'll listen to a powerful story called The Moral Dilemma I Had to Face. It's a deep and emotional journey about choosing between what's right and what's easy. As you listen, you'll practice your advanced English skills and explore themes like integrity, responsibility, and personal growth. So, sit back, get comfortable, and enjoy the story. It all began on a rainy Thursday morning, the kind that makes the sky feel lower and the city move slower, when I walked into the office not expecting my life to take a turn that would test the very core of my values and principles. I was working as a financial compliance analyst at a mid-sized investment firm known for its aggressive strategies and bold acquisitions. And although I had grown increasingly skeptical of certain practices behind the scenes, I had always managed to convince myself that everything fell within the bounds of legality, or at least plausible deniability. But that morning, as I sipped my coffee and opened my inbox, I found an internal memo accidentally forwarded to me, containing a spreadsheet filled with transactions that clearly crossed the line, pointing to deliberate manipulation of client portfolios to create short-term gains for a few key executives at the expense of long-term clients' investments. The data was detailed, the timing precise, and the implication unmistakable. Someone high up was cooking the books, and I, now in possession of this information, had a choice to make: speak up and risk everything I had worked for, or stay quiet and preserve my position, my salary, and the security it gave to my aging parents who depended on me, especially now that my father was dealing with mounting medical bills. I stared at the screen for a long time, rereading the numbers, checking for any possibility that I had misinterpreted them, but the more I analyzed, the clearer it became. This wasn't an accident, and I couldn't unknow what I now knew. I remember sitting there, frozen, as a storm rumbled outside, and realizing that I was facing a moral dilemma, not just a professional one: to do what was right and potentially destroy my career, or do what was easy and live with the knowledge that I had been complicit by omission. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and anxious mornings, wrestling with questions I had never truly asked myself before. Was I the kind of person who only valued integrity when it cost me nothing? Did I believe in justice enough to risk being its messenger? And perhaps more disturbingly, if I stayed silent and someone else eventually exposed the fraud, would I be held accountable too, not just legally but ethically? The pressure mounted when I was called into a closed-door meeting with my manager, who seemed unusually tense and mentioned, in passing, the importance of team loyalty and discretion during sensitive times, which I interpreted as a subtle warning. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was already racing. Were they on to me? Did they suspect I had seen the memo? That same evening, I sat on the edge of my bed, thinking of my father's smile, my mother's quiet strength, and the sacrifices they had made so I could have a stable life, and I wondered whether blowing the whistle would be a betrayal to them or an act of honoring everything they taught me about honesty and courage. I spoke to no one about it, not even my closest friends, afraid that sharing the burden might put them in danger too, or worse, that someone might let something slip. Then came the moment of action. I drafted an anonymous report and sent it to the regulatory authority, attaching the memo and outlining the details without naming myself, thinking that this would be the safest route. But as soon as I hit send, my heart dropped. There was no turning back now. In the days that followed, investigations were launched quietly, and tension in the office became almost unbearable, with rumors swirling, and people looking over their shoulders, wondering who had done it. Then, one afternoon, 2 federal agents arrived at the firm, asking to speak with several executives, and the next day, a few of them were placed on administrative leave pending further inquiry. I felt a strange mix of relief and terror, because while I knew I had done the right thing, I also knew it was only a matter of time before they traced the report back to me. Even if I had used an anonymous email, the patterns, the phrasing, the timing, it all pointed to someone with specific knowledge. And eventually, I was called in by human resources and asked a series of probing questions, to which I responded cautiously, trying to maintain my composure. Later that week, I received a formal letter informing me that my contract would not be renewed due to restructuring, which was clearly just a way to quietly remove me without admitting any retaliation. And although I expected it, it still hurt deeply. Losing my job, my income, and the comfort of the routine I had built for myself. I packed my things in silence, avoiding eye contact with my colleagues, unsure who viewed me as a hero and who saw me as a traitor, and when I stepped out of that building for the last time, the sun was shining, but I felt as if I were walking through fog. The following months were difficult. Finding a new job was harder than I thought, especially with whispers about me circulating in the industry. And more than once I questioned whether I had made a mistake, whether I had been naive to think that doing the right thing would lead to something good. But then, one day, I received a handwritten letter from a former client of the firm, an elderly woman whose portfolio had been mismanaged, thanking the anonymous person who had helped expose the corruption, saying that the investigation had restored her faith in justice and helped recover a portion of her lost savings. And as I read her words, tears filled my eyes. Because for the first time I felt seen, not by the system, not by the press, but by someone who had truly been affected. Slowly, I rebuilt my life, took freelance consulting gigs, started speaking at ethics conferences, and even returned to school to study organizational psychology, determined to understand not just how people make unethical choices, but how environments push them to do so. The experience changed me deeply, not just because of the professional fallout, but because I had faced a mirror and chosen to stand by my values, despite the cost. And while I can't say I have no regrets, because I do miss the stability, the simplicity of my old life, I know now that some moments define us, and the way we respond to moral dilemmas says more about who we are than any title or salary ever could. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same, and though I walked away with less than I had before, I carried something greater with me, the unshakable clarity that integrity, even when inconvenient, is the only path I'm willing to walk. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope this story gave you something to think about, and helped you practice your English along the way. Remember, every choice we make shapes who we become. Keep listening, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care and goodbye for now.